Greetings, Culture Warriors. It is I, Jeff Fiera, the author of Culture is Everything, and your host for this latest dispatch from the front. This story from Fox Business News. Epic Games asks court to prevent what it describes as Apple's retaliation. Apple terminated Epic Games' App Store account. Do you like games? This has been a big controversy in the gamer space. To the article. Epic Games said late on Friday that it has asked a court to stop what it saw as Apple Inc.'s retaliation against the Fortnite creator after the iPhone maker terminated Epic Games' account on its App Store. Epic Games filed for a preliminary injunction that would put its game back in the App Store and restore its developer account. The filing was made in the United States District Court for the Northern District of California. It argued that Epic Games is likely to suffer irreparable harm in the absence of a preliminary injunction, that the balance of harms tips sharply in Epic's favor. The filing described the iPhone maker as a monopolist that maintains its monopolies by explicitly prohibiting any competitive entry. Late last week, Apple terminated Epic Games' account on its App Store amid a legal battle over the iPhone maker's in-app payment guidelines and accusations they constitute a monopoly. Apple said last week its move will not affect Epic Games' Unreal Engine, a software tool relied on by hundreds of other app makers. But the move meant iPhone users will not be able to download Fortnite or other Epic titles through the Apple's App Store. This was a clear warning to any other developer that would dare challenge Apple's monopolies. Follow our rules or we will cut you off from 1 billion iOS consumers. Challenge us and we will destroy your business, Epic Games said in Friday's filing. Apple pulled Epic Games after the popular games creator implemented a feature to let iPhone users make in-app purchases directly rather than using Apple's in-app purchase system, which charges commissions of 30%. Apple said it would allow Fortnite back into the store if Epic removed the direct payment feature, but Epic refused to do so, saying complying with Apple's request would be to collude with Apple to maintain their monopoly over in-app payments on iOS. Okay, this is a big deal for a variety of reasons. Number one is that the old model of game economics is pretty much dead. So if you think back in the day, a game manufacturer would develop the content for the game. They would release it via physical media like a CD. And you would go into a store such as a GameStop. You would buy the game. You would put it, and you would play the game on your device, whether it was a computer or whether it was a console, and you would use it for however long you used it, and then maybe there would be a secondary market you would sell for a fraction of what you originally paid for in order to basically get rid of the disc and get something for it. But the only taste that the game company ever got was the original sale. And so they would have to sell lots and lots of physical units in order for the game to be profitable. Now, in a game like Fortnite, that's no big deal. It's so popular that they undoubtedly recoup the cost of development many times over. But that model is dead, in part because so many games are now played on mobile devices. Mobile devices don't have CDs. So how do you get the content in? You have to download it. And downloads require a platform. So in order to control and make sure that you pay for the content of the download, you have to have some sort of engine that does the payments for you. And here's where Apple acts like a monopolist. If you want to download apps to your device, your iOS device, you have to go through the Apple App Store. If it's not on the Apple App Store, you don't get it. I have no idea if it's even possible to physically add an app to the device that if it doesn't come through the App Store. Never heard of it, never tried it. The bottom line of it is most users would be utterly unfamiliar with it, even if it were possible through some workaround. You get your apps through the App Store. And so if you're not on the App Store, guess what? You don't get it. Now, the App Store is really just a repository for files and a payment system. So it's not like the App Store requires a bunch of additional development or anything on Apple's part. It's probably one of the more basic things that exists on an iPhone. But you go out to that App Store and you get your app and you download it and you pay for it. And that's pretty much the customer experience. But charging 30% for that is just highway robbery. I know vendors who won't take American Express because American Express charges 3%. And American Express, of course, is doing a lot more for that 3% than the Apple App Store is. So you can see what this might do, especially as finances have tightened in the gaming industry. There's nothing quite so common now as gaming companies going out of business. They're basically one hit away from bankruptcy all the time. So their margins are relatively thin. Games have become a lot more advanced. It requires a much broader staff in order to produce a good game. Gone are the days where you see great games just being produced by one person, working through a case of Coke in the middle of the night before going to their day job. Become way too sophisticated for that. Games today are a lot like movies. In fact, and if you don't believe me, when you finish a game, actually watch the credits. Force yourself to sit there and watch and just see how many people are involved in this enterprise. Those crawls are just as long as the ones for your typical blockbuster movie. It is a really large group of people necessary in order to produce it. And if you don't think that's the case too, if you would rather see it at the start of the game, as soon as you put it in and it loads, look at the number of chyrons that show up on the front end of the game. Those are all the subcontractors and other production houses involved in the game. And it used to be there was only one, the game manufacturer. And now you'll see one for the engine developer. You'll see one for the main money man. You'll see, it's just ridiculous. It's gotten to the point where it's just like film. You look on the front end of a movie today, and you typically won't see one production logo. You'll see 4 or 5. It's how complicated the efforts become. And so the combination of a much more involved development, along with the fact that the overall price point hasn't moved all that much, and you get the margins of the game developer under staunch attack. And so for Apple, which is really just, kind of the retailer, but because there's no physical media, they're not really doing a lot. Not doing anywhere near as much as a retailer does. Apple's not pushing these things. They're not really marketing them. They're just kind of the place that the box is sitting in before someone comes in and takes it. For them to be charging 30% is just outrageous. But here's the secret about Apple. What was the last Apple innovation? Apple's a company that's been known for innovation. So what was their last innovation? I'll give you a hint. Tim Cook, I don't think, has produced anything. In fact, Apple's been in the news for the stuff that doesn't work, such as the keyboards on their very expensive iMacs. So, how are they making their money then? Well, they're continuing to crank out slightly different versions of the exact same thing. And they're making it through the App Store. They're selling software as a service, basically, and making money that way. So that's why Apple is dug in, and they don't want to give up their 30%. That monopoly is very lucrative for them. And what do they have to replace it with? Moreover, the trouble in China is looming large in Apple's mind. for a variety of reasons. Number one is that Apple manufactures most of its devices in China. So that creates problems in times of political unrest. Number two is a large number of Apple's developers are on H-1B visas from places like China. So as the Trump administration has responded to the challenges with China by saying, fine, we're going to limit H-1B visas, well, Apple is having to go for developers to those lousy Americans and pay the usual premium to get American developers. The market for American developers is pretty tight, although Apple has an advantage because it's kind of a pedigree name. People want to get Apple on their resume. So they have some advantages in that labor market, some leverage, but not as much as they do over someone who is only in the country because of Apple's goodwill. And so that's problematic for them. Any problems that exist with that global supply chain back to China also creates outsized issues for Apple. So Apple's looking down the barrel of some considerable risk that's going to eat into their profits without having the next great thing locked and loaded and ready to go. They are living on the fumes of Steve Jobs. And that's because Tim Cook can't create anything but drama. It's just a fact. So we look at this through our values lens. We see a couple of things here. Number one is that Fortnite would like to be able to get their games in the hands of their customers without being taxed heavily by the storefront that they're using. They want to have some freedom. They want to see some competition there, because they can't continue to produce even games that have been as successful as Fortnite. They can't continue to produce that if the vast majority of the profit is consumed by Apple through the App Store. Apple wants to protect its monopoly. It views it as those devices are our devices. The App Store is the way we control what goes into those devices. And so they want to not just control it, but they want to profit mightily from it. They want to exploit app developers. Now, it's foolish because because all they're really doing is creating an incentive for app developers to go Android exclusive or develop another competitor to the App Store. And Apple's primary business is not payment processing. So they're in danger of disincentivizing people to get their devices because, hey, my kids love Fortnite. I'm buying my kid a phone. If they can't play Fortnite on the phone, they don't want the phone. And phones are not, especially for children, phones are not really that different, manufacturer to manufacturer. So you're encouraging people to flee your device. It's a stupid strategy over the long term for a little short-term gain. But Apple wants to bully developers in order to maintain their power. This is really the mark of companies before they collapse. These heavy-handed kind of tactics. People came to Apple out of love. Apple wants to keep them out of fear. The story doesn't tend to end well. The court has an interest in seeing that competition is assured, but a lot of that money from Apple winds up coming back into the government. And a lot of those judges are appointed by politicians. And so if you don't think that Apple has great influence over courts, you would be mistaken. The best thing that could happen to Fortnite would be, or Epic Games here, would be for them to get in front of a jury. Because the jury will almost undoubtedly choose the smaller developer, over the great big bullying company. And Apple will be forced to settle on terms more favorable to Epic Games. So this little tempest in a teapot is a real test of how big and how powerful we're going to let big tech get. And it'll be one to keep an eye on. Thank you and have a great day.